Right, welcome back to Sam Ramsbottom, who joins the Playing Away From Home podcast once again. Thanks for joining us, man. How are we doing?
Not too bad. All excited for part two and give a little bit of an update of playing a lot further away from home, I think it should be now called.
Absolutely, yeah, fair point. We'll touch on that shortly. So just to recap, obviously, when we first spoke to you, we covered a bit about your youth career at Tranmere Rovers, various loan spells across the country, bit of time with Macclesfield, Alfreton, Greenock Morton. And then when we last spoke, it was in the midst of COVID and things were all over the place for a lot of footballers, but there was talk of a potential move to Germany at your time. Do you want to pick us up and see what happened there?
Yeah, so I think the last time we spoke, I think I told you that I'd turned down a deal in Armenia as well. That was the part of the conversation anyway. But yeah, I was due to sign over in Germany for a team in the 5th division. Looked like it was going ahead. I'd been there, I'd been back. They'd gone on a temporary shutdown because of COVID. Looked like in the January that it was all agreed and it was all gonna go through. Hit the January window open, obviously the 1st of January, and little bit known, the Brexit regulations kicked in and things like that. And obviously with now UK citizens needing a visa to work in Europe, the club just weren't willing to finance a visa for myself, even though we'd agreed a contract. We tried to work around it and things like that, but it just so happened that we weren't able to do it, and we didn't manage to get the deal over the line, which was unfortunate, because it would have been a good opportunity. I still keep tabs on them now, but yeah, it would have been a good opportunity. But obviously, my career took a different path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose that's worth touching on. You've sort of kept in touch with that team. Then it's not like completely burnt the bridges. Are there still possibilities in the future for a spell in Germany?
Yeah. You never know. Football's a funny game. Like I keep tabs on them from afar, and I follow a couple of the boys on Instagram and things like that. Like, so it's not as though like it's completely gone. It'll always be a kind of interesting one for me because it was one that didn't kind of come off for me. But yeah, it's just I follow them and keep an eye out on results and things like that just every once in a while. And I think I know they've been promoted into the 4th division, but I don't think they didn't manage to get promoted this season. So you never know. I've still got contacts from over there, so you never know further down the line and see where that takes us. But for now, we're still all, and who knows what's going to happen to Sam in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, fair enough. Time is of the essence. So the next contract then came a little bit closer to home. So you made a step back into Scotland with Dumbarton, and they were in League One at the time, right?
Yeah, Dumbarton were in League One at the time. I think when we last spoke was probably around the July, August time of that year before kind of pre-season to start, because they were a bit delayed, obviously, because of the pandemic. So I'd had a couple of trials. I'd gone into a couple of teams in Scotland. They kind of not planned out for some for financial reasons and some for other reasons. And then I think it was around the League One up in Scotland, they closed down again because of COVID for a good couple of months. And there was talk of it restarting up again. And I managed to get in contact with the Dumbarton manager, just gave him a ring, and I think they'd had a lone goalkeeper at the start of the season, and he'd been recalled by Hibernian. So I gave him a call and just said, look, would you be interested? Obviously, I've not played since obviously the back end of the previous season. I was like, look, I want to get back in and get back playing. Would you be interested? And thankfully he took me on and he signed me, and didn't do great in the league. We ended up in the relegation playoffs, but we ended up staying up that year, which was a great feat. We done quite well towards the back end. I kept a fair few clean sheets. I think I kept a third of the games we kept clean sheets in. So it was I done quite well. I was quite proud with what we done and managing to stay up. And then obviously we beat Edinburgh City in the final that year to stay up. And then little be known, the way life works in football, you never know who you're going to end up signing for.
So when you said you gave the Dumbarton manager a call, was that a contact you already had, or just got his number off someone else? Or
it was a number off a pal of mine who'd previously played on loan there a couple of years. It was obviously Jim Duffy was the manager at the time, and he just said to me, "Here's his number." Like, because I was out of a contract, out of a club, and I was desperate to try and just get some games in between then and the end of the season. And I just, on the off chance, just called him up on a think it was a random Monday afternoon, and just said, look, here, this is who I am. Obviously, you may know a little bit about me, you may not. Look, I'm willing to come up and train just to put my feet in the door and see what happens. And then, thankfully, he already knew a lot about me because Jim had been a previous manager at Greenock Morton before I'd gotten there. So I think he'd spoken to a couple of people and took references and said, yeah, come up and come and sign. So the deal was done really quickly. It was done within the space of 3-4 days, and I was up here and I was playing. So it was good. It got me game time in between then and the end of the season. Obviously, we managed to stay up, which was a massive plus.
And at that level, and I suppose that time of year, was it just a case of it's a contract until the end of the season, and we'll see where we're at? Is it quite hard for you to sort of play without knowing your immediate future at that stage? Have you always got one eye on what your next move might be, or how does it work?
It was and it wasn't. It was a little bit of, from my part especially, a little bit of a desperation just to keep myself playing, because obviously I had ambitions of obviously getting back full time and playing football as a career and things like that. So it was like I needed to get something going. So like me and Jim had a call, and he was like, look, he said, I need somebody to come in and play till the end of the season. He was like, we're losing obviously the Hibs loanee. He was like, I need somebody to come in and play. So, and that was the phone call, and it was done within the space of a couple of days. And obviously in my head, I was thinking I can use it as a stopgap to, and then eventually try and get back into full time. But obviously I extended my contract again for another year after that, under the new manager that came in. But yeah, it was interesting because you were always wanting to put your best foot forward, and it gave me a short time frame as well because the games were so condensed. I can remember a point where I think we played 7 games in the space of 2 weeks. So we were playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I think we played again on the Tuesday night. So it was a case of just wash yourself off and go again because you were barely getting time to recover. And especially at the time, I wasn't working. So I was doing a lot of traveling because I was only getting paid expenses, but I was only traveling to and from basically almost for games just to try and get them in. But no, it was worthwhile. It kept me rolling forward and enjoying my football. It was probably a really enjoyable period under Jim because he simplified everything for me. I hold massive respect for him to this day.
And from just going back to the games coming quick and fast, from a goalkeeper point of view, and no disrespect to, but compared to other positions and stuff, like a lot more recovery and stuff. Did you find that actually games coming quick and fast was probably better for you almost, just to like keep you in the moment and not having a big gap in between, and maybe sometimes you could stay up there a bit longer and stay in the mix?
I think so, a little bit, because as well I think it had probably been because I'd been a bit in and out the team at Greenock. I think I'd played about 14, 15 games for Morton. And then it had probably elapsed a full 12 months, obviously with the pandemic included, that I'd probably actually played an official game. So to go in and play Saturday, Tuesday, or whatever the run of games was quite good for me because it didn't give me time to dwell on things that maybe it was a little bit of rustiness. Maybe I could have done better for goals and things like that. It didn't give me that time to really think about it. It was right, the next one's here. It was a lot, don't get me wrong, obviously, especially even for a goalkeeper in recovery. I obviously kept myself fit during COVID, but for match sharpness and things like that, getting used to kicking 60, 70, 80, 90 balls a game isn't much playing out from the back in League One. It was still a lot. I think I've got a lot of videos of me climbing into ice baths and things like that with some salts and some stuff like that just to try and get the body ready. But no, it was good. It was enjoyable, and it was we had a good group at that time that were really pushing for it, and as well wanted the club to stay up.
And it's a bit of a weird one, obviously, the playoffs, and it's quite common in a lot of European countries now, isn't it? But the relegation promotion sort of thing, what top end of one league is trying to nick the place of the one who's finished like second from bottom in the league above. What are your memories from the playoffs?
I remember there was a lot of, it was obviously a lot of thankfully we beat, who was it? We beat Stranraer away in the first game, and we beat them 1-0. Against Stevie Farrell, who ended up taking the Dumbarton job that summer. It was his team that we played, and then I think we drew with them 0-0 in the second leg at home. I can remember they missed a penalty, which was quite tense, and then we went into the final against Edinburgh City. Thankfully, we beat them 3-1 at their place in the first leg, and then they beat us 1-0 at home. But I think, and obviously I got to know a couple of the Edinburgh City boys afterwards, speaking to them, one of their boys had actually been sent off in the second leg just after they'd scored, and it kind of sucked the momentum for them out the game. which looking back, it probably did as well. It allowed us to kill the game a little bit more. But it was nerve-wracking. It actually probably made me probably the second most emotional I'd been on a football pitch, just because of the fact that we'd managed to stay up, and we probably weren't favourites to stay up, because especially when you're in a team that's not getting great results all season and you're playing a team that is getting great results, it can be a little bit of a difficult one. The expectation is probably that the teams that are more than likely winning games are going to carry on winning games. But no, we came through it and we stayed up, which was a massive plus.
Yeah, and then obviously the end of the season comes. Had you already had conversation with other clubs, and other clubs already sniffing around when your contract's up? Or
at that time, I think from thinking back, I had agreed. Well, there had been conversations with my previous agent that something had been agreed with somebody else in Scotland to step back up. But with managers leaving and things like that, and new managers coming in, I think that ended up getting pulled, from what I can remember. So it ended up me being I was at a point where I think there was only about a week's gap between the end of the playoffs and the start of pre-season, for all the clubs in Scotland, and it just ended up being that, right, I'm not going to be able to take that move that I thought I was going to get, so I'm going to re-sign for Dumbarton and give it another year of consistently playing, to see where that would have took me.
And were you given was the manager almost like guaranteeing you can have the number one shirt, like this is how we're going forward? Or
yeah, when obviously I think that summer Jim Duffy left, and Stevie Farrell came in, and I can remember I was back on the Wirral, and I got a phone call from him, and he just said, look, he said, I really want to keep hold of you. He said, I think that we can build a good squad moving forward for the next season. He said, and try and push for a playoff spot. He said, look, he said, the number one shirt's yours until it's not, which is the most you can probably be guaranteed in football. He said, the number one shirt's yours until you show performances that don't warrant you to keep it anymore. Obviously agreed certain money and things like that, and that was it. The deal was pretty much done. I think I ended up coming back up about a week later for pre-season, and that was it. We were back on the road again.
And then how did that season go? Obviously, he's mentioned that he had hopes of the playoffs. Was it, did you ever get towards that level? Or
well, we actually started the season on fire. I think after 6 or 7 games, we were top of the league. I think we'd won 6 out of the first. It might have been 5 out of the first 6 or something like that. And we ended up playing. I can actually remember it really well. We ended up playing Peterhead away, and we travelled up the night before, which was quite uncommon for a part-time team. And on the day, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I think we got beat 5-0 up at Peterhead, and the season then took a bit of a downward spiral, if I'm honest. We went a long period without getting positive results, which was quite disappointing, because we had what I believe was quite a strong squad. What was going on, I still to this day can't really put my finger on. And we ended up back in the relegation playoff positions. I think I ended up coming out of the team just after the close of the January window. Stevie Roll signed a lad from Rangers on loan, who took my place, and I think results still weren't great, and we ended up finishing the relegation playoffs, and we ended up relegated by Edinburgh City at the end of that season in the playoff semi-final, which was again disappointing, because you never want to be involved in a team that's gone down.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a bit of an interesting moment. It was almost deja vu, but not quite the same result for you in the playoffs that time. So for those games, did you not play in the playoffs then that year?
No, I didn't play in the playoffs. I think I got to about 36 appearances that season, because I played for the full of the January, some of the February, and then I came out of the team for the February, March, and the April, and then the playoffs. I think I played once between then and the end of the season, which to this day I dispute losing my place. I don't think I was the main cause of it and things like that, but obviously football's a game of opinions, and when your results aren't going your way, you're willing to change anything and everything to try and get a result. So yeah, it just so happens it's part and parcel of football. And yeah, we ended up unfortunately getting relegated. And that was kind of that for me at Dumbarton.
And then, so when the keeper came in, did you say on loan from Rangers?
Yeah, he came on loan from Rangers. A boy called Kieran Wright, who actually I got on like me and him got on like a house on fire, and still texting to this day. He's a good lad and probably go on to have a really good career.
I was going to say, how do you sort of? Goalkeeper's a very unique position. Someone comes in, it's you or them, isn't it? It's not as if you can both be in the team. So, and if someone comes in a bit younger than you, maybe less experienced, how do you sort of handle that? Is it?
It's
you want
difficult.
to be the team, or
the type of person you are. I think I had this when we spoke last time on the podcast about when Danny Rogers came into Green at Morton, and I ended up sitting down with him and apologising over the way probably I'd behaved in his first couple of days, because I think I'd partially spat my dummy out over things and disagreements and whatnot. But again, like, me and Danny still get on really well. But it's one of them where we can't control a decision. We can't control. We can only control what we can do, which is playing well and training well and looking after yourself. If sometimes it can be from the team doing poorly, or a bit of bad luck, or whatever, or a bit of bad form, that you can end up losing your place, and it's not our decision who plays. The most thing that I think 95% of players ask for is a bit of honesty, which is when you're then told, look, I'm going to take you out of the team because I think you either need a break, you need a rest, or I don't think you're playing well enough at the moment. But I think at that point at Dumbarton, I think I wish I'd have had that a little bit of communication to then to understand why and what the reasons were, and this will then become a run theme onto what we'll probably discuss later.
Fair enough. So we're summer 2022 now. We are, aren't we?
Yeah.
So then Dumbarton have gone down, and then an opportunity comes up at Edinburgh.
Yeah. So I was obviously a free agent that summer. Me and Stevie Farrell had a conversation, and we both kind of agreed that my time was done, and I didn't want to resign, and I made that quite known to him that I didn't want to resign. I probably wouldn't have anyway, even if he'd have put something in front of me. To which then I had conversations with my agents, and there was, again, we were still looking at trying to get abroad and trying to go and play either in mainland Europe or further afield. And then I got a call from Alan Maybury, Edinburgh City, and he offered me the opportunity. And I think it was really quite late in the day as well. I think me and my agent had conversations about possibly going to Cyprus, and it looked like it was near enough getting to the point where we were done, and we were almost looking at flights and getting ready to go. And I'd gone in and trained with Edinburgh City a couple of times, and we were waiting obviously for news back from Cyprus. What had basically happened was Edinburgh City sat me down, and it was, God, I think we trained on a Saturday, and we were due to play Airdrie in the Premier Sports Cup on the Tuesday night, and basically got sat down. I got a phone call on the Sunday, and was basically said, look, Sam, if you don't sign Monday, then we aren't going to be able to sign you moving forward. We're going to have to bring somebody in, and that'll obviously, you'll lose out essentially. And having some conversations with my agent over that weekend, we decided the best decision was to sign for Edinburgh City, just so I had something tangible and in my hand, and that I could kick on and work for. So yeah, I ended up signing, and then made my debut the following night against Airdrie away, which was quite, I think I'd only trained for 10 days, something like that.
And then, so with the move to Cyprus sort of put on hold, did you let them know? Did you sort of give them an ultimatum? Where was your head at?
But I think you never kind of know. Like, obviously, I trust my agent, and my agent knows me really well. I probably class him more as a friend than an actual agent, because he'll be brutally honest with me. From the conversations we'd had, it looked like it was going the way that I was going to be flying out and joining up with them. And it just came to the point where it was like, if it's not today, then we're going to have to move on to something else, because we can't just keep pushing back. And I think it had kind of dragged on for nearly 10 days, 2 weeks, where we were getting to the point where we were like, we need this to take the next step now, and Sam needs to get out there and get training and things like that. And in the end, we just turned around. We said, look, that we're going to go and sign for Edinburgh City, and we kind of just said, look, he's made that decision now. He's going to stay in the UK and go from there.
And at this point, obviously, after a few years in Scotland, you consider yourself to be quite settled in the area. Have you moved around much of the country? Obviously, you moved to Edinburgh as a place sounds very enticing.
Yeah, staying I stay now just outside Edinburgh. But yeah, it was kind of a decision I'd made to just kind of base myself up here now, and just kind of, obviously at that time I was still a little bit to and from, up and down from Scotland, and then just made the decision that this is where I'm gonna base my life now, because the time I was working up in Scotland as well, obviously being part time at a couple of clubs, so I was like I'd had a decent job and things like that, so I was like, right, this is me setting up camp now. And then, yeah, it was just part of the decision making that my football was going to be up here. So,
cool. And then obviously you've been thrown in at the deep end pretty much a game shortly after signing. How did your first few weeks, months, how did the season progress at Edinburgh City?
It started, in my belief, it started fantastically well. Where I made my debut against Airdrie. We drew 1-1 in that Premier Sports Cup. It goes straight to penalties. So we saved 2 penalties in the penalty shootout, which was, we won it. I think the rules are that if you draw and then you win on pens, you win a bonus point. So we took 2 points, which is kind of, again, a mad system of doing things. And then I think I can't remember who else was in our group, but I think we'd won. We ended up not qualifying anyway for the knockout stages, but the 4 games I'd played, I think we played Arbroath, Airdrie, Cardenbeath, and somebody else. There was 4 teams, and I can't remember who the 4th one was. But I felt I'd done quite well, and I was quite happy with my performances. And then we ended up signing Robbie Much, who was an ex-Falkirk goalkeeper. He was a couple of years younger than me, and me and Muchie knew each other anyway prior to him signing. And we get to the third game of the season, and Muchie's in the team, which was, again, disappointing from my part, because I felt as though I'd done quite well in the build up to the games and things that into the start of the season. We were playing Kelty Hearts away, and Muchie was in the squad. And to be fair, I can't really complain too much, because we started the season like a house on fire. We massively overachieved for a team that had obviously knocked Dumbarton out and came up into League One. And yeah, we started the season on fire. I think at one point we may have gone top for a couple of days. We were in the top 4 for probably the vast majority of the season. So it was quite difficult, and it was quite frustrating being a number 2. Obviously, I pushed Muchie as much as I could. We had a good goalkeeping group. Jamie McDonald was our goalkeeper coach as well, who's obviously ex-Falkirk, Wraith and Hearts goalie. And he comes into the story a little bit later down the line in my career. But yeah, he was our goalie coach, and felt he really improved us as a group. And obviously I managed to push Muchie as far as I think I could. And he ended up getting a move to Ayr United in that summer off the back of the performance he's put in, which, to be fair, were probably deserved, because he was probably the unsung hero of the team. So yeah, it was good. It was frustrating, but obviously you can't look back in anger.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you keep yourself motivated? Again, being a goalkeeper, it's a unique position, and obviously you're very complimentary of the other guy coming in there. But is it tough? Like, are you almost waiting? Obviously, you wouldn't wish injury on someone, but you're almost waiting for an injury or a slip up in form, or are you just happy for the team?
Yeah, it depends on what type of. I think a lot of it depends on what type of character you are, and at what point in your career you are as well, because there's probably boys who are 36, 37 and they take moves that, no, right, I'm probably not going to play, I'm going to be a number 2 and just be a good character around the dressing room. Like, I can remember from that, when obviously Muchie had signed and he ended up playing the first game against Kelty Hearts. I can remember I did have a bit of probably what you call a bee in your bonnet, and I ended up having a conversation with Alan Mabry, who was obviously our manager, and sat him down. I just said, look, what's going on? I feel as though I've come in, I've played 4 games, I've done well for you. Like, why was I not starting the first league game of the season? And basically the conversation entailed that Alan turned around and said, look, I felt as though I woke up on that day and I decided to give Muchie a run. He said, look, I'm going to give Muchie the next 5 games. I think we had another cup a little bit further down the line. I think maybe in the Premier Sports next round or something like that. He said, look, I'm going to give Muchie these next, I think it was the first month of games. You've had 4, give him 4. He said, you'll play in the cup. He said, and then I'll make a decision from there who's going to be my number 1 going forward. Which, when you hear that as a player, probably it did light a little bit of a fire under me because I wanted to keep training well and things like that. But you also know if a goalkeeper's starting in the league, it's going to be very difficult to displace him unless it's a sending off or a massive loss in form or things like that. So going into that game, I think we played Queen of the South away or something like that. I kind of knew going in that I wasn't probably going to take the league place back, but I had to put my best foot forward anyway to see what I could do and try and give him a headache. And that's all I've done for the vast majority of the season. Like, I remember I had a couple of conversations with Alan about possibly putting me back in the league, just because and I was very open and honest with Muchie over the conversations I'd had, and I'd say to Muchie, look, I'm gonna go and speak to him because I feel as though results have maybe not gone our way or we're conceding a lot of goals. And if somebody says that to me, if they were my number two, I would go, fair enough. Like, I can understand exactly why, because I wanted to play the exact same as Muchie does, and Muchie wants to keep his place as much as I want to take it. So it's the way I think if you're a bad goalkeeping group, you're not conducive to development if you're going behind each other's backs. I think it has to be very open and honest with each other.
Yeah, it's the right level of healthy competition, I suppose, isn't it? And as you mentioned, if you've got a goalkeeping coach who you feel like is progressing you as well, then it's not the end of the world if you're not playing all the games. You're still progressing as a player, and obviously that leads on to further opportunities. So going into last summer, so 2023, we are now. Am I right in thinking you had a bit of a run in the cup again before?
Yeah. So, God, this is where my life takes about 17 different turns. So yeah, in the summer there'd been no real talk of anything. Like, I think I'd kind of hit the point where I didn't know whether full-time football had kind of fell off the cards for me, barring a massive change in fortune and a massive run of great appearances and things like that. I don't know whether it was kind of me thinking that, right, probably League One, League Two, maybe the Lowland League, and just part time it till I get to the point where I don't really want to do it anymore. And I had re-signed for Edinburgh City. I'd had a conversation with Alan Mabry, and it was going to be, look, Sam, I'm going to give you a run and see what you can do, essentially. I think there'd been a lot of change of ownership at Edinburgh as well, and there'd been a name change and things like that. And me and Alan had a conversation. I said, look, I want to play. I said, that's all I want. I said, money didn't really bother me, and I just want to play week in, week out. I said, I want to show what I'm actually capable of doing with the support behind me. So I re-signed, and I think it was let me make sure that gets said right. So during the start of pre-season, obviously Jamie McDonald's still coaching us as goalies and things like that. So it was myself, it was Cameron Quaid, who was the number 2 at the time, and Jamie McDonald was out of a club, and he just left Wraith. So we were chatting one night at training, and I just said to him, look, Jamie, obviously I know you're out of a club. Have a conversation with my agent. He may be able to sort you something. He may not. Like, just trying to do a good deed for somebody.
Yeah.
So I sent him my agent's number, my agent his number. They had a conversation. About a week or 10 days later, I get a phone call from my agent to say there's a chance Jamie could go out to Cape Town, out to Cape Town Spurs. Would he be interested? I said, I don't know. I'll give him a ring and see what he thinks and X, Y, and Z. So phoned him, had the chat, and just said, look, speak to Darren, have a conversation, see where it leads, basically. Little did I know, about 6 days later, Jamie's on a flight to Cape Town. So it coincided. There was a couple of personal issues with Jamie and his family and things like that, which I wouldn't want to discuss because they're his conversations to have. But Jamie had to fly home. And I think through conversations with my agent and the sporting director and the owner of the club over there, my agent turned around and said, look, I've got another goalkeeper that I could bring out who's a younger, probably age profile than what you wanted, because they were after quite a senior goalkeeper. He said, look, I can bring him out. We can agree a deal, get him out here, get him signed, and then you've got your goalkeeper for the upcoming season. Turns out that goalkeeper was me. And I got that phone call on I think it was a Thursday night or a Wednesday night. Had to then try and negotiate my release from Edinburgh, try and get myself away from my work to then get a flight over to Cape Town. I think at the time we played 2 of the Premier Sports Cup games, and I think we had Stranraer away on the Saturday, and we had Stranraer away on the Saturday. We had Ross County on the Wednesday, and then we were due to play Greenock Morton on the Saturday. And I phoned Alan Mabry after the Stranraer game and just said to him, "Look, the team Jamie's been at, there's a chance I can go." We kind of had a handshake agreement that if I was able to go abroad, they wouldn't stand in my way. To which Alan Mabry was really good with me, and so was the assistant manager Mark Kerr. And they just said, "Look, we need you to play Wednesday night, and then we can allow you to fly. So it gives us time to bring somebody in." So yeah, they allowed me to. We played Ross County on the Wednesday, which was quite strange because Ross County have got a boy who plays up front, Simon Murray, who's actually played out in South Africa. So while he was stood in front of me on set pieces, I was asking him questions because I was obviously flying out there. So yeah, I was quite interested, and then had a chat to him after the game. And spoke to a couple of lads and just said, "Look, that's me done," and basically walked out. And I think I got back home at about 11 o'clock that night, and I was up at 3 to be at Edinburgh Airport to fly out for 6 o'clock in the morning, which then only gets more interesting when there's a military coup that delays your flight.
I bet. I mean, there's going to be plenty of questions we'll come on to, but I suppose initially this is South Africa we're talking about. It's not just a move to Scotland. It's not just nipping over to Europe. First of all, how's your agent? Has he got like established links there? How did the sort of connection with Cape Town come up?
So how the link came about was the sporting director who took the job, Sean Connor. He'd managed my agent over it. I think it was either Sligo or Pats, but I'll have to fact check that to make sure it's right. But yeah, he'd managed my agent over in the League of Ireland, and basically they'd come back in touch, and Sean Connor had already taken the job or was on his way to taking the job as technical director or sporting director. And they'd had conversations back and forward, and Sean had obviously mentioned to my agent Darren to say, "Look, I'm in need of a goalkeeper," and that's how that link was formed. It was and it was only in a chance meeting as well, because I don't think Sean and Darren had contact for a number of years. So they ended up getting back in touch, and then that led to me going out there and signing.
Happy days. And for you, obviously, I know you've always had an eye on playing abroad, but again, this is South Africa we're talking about. It's not your standard move, and you haven't had too long to think about it by the sounds of it. Was it a no-brainer for you? Just give it a go. Why not?
For me, it was a lot of things. It was a no-brainer because I'm kind of thinking to myself, this may be the last opportunity I kind of get to do this. Like, it was something, if you'd have asked, and I say this all the time, and people think I'm probably a little bit mad for saying it, if you'd have asked probably 14, 15-year-old Sam what he wanted to do, he'd want to get to 200 appearances. He'd like to win a promotion. He'd like to play a full season, at least one full season of games. He'd like to go and play abroad somewhere. And thankfully now I've managed to tick off all them things off Sam's bucket list. So yeah, it was there was obviously a lot of logistics to go into it, and a lot of obviously moving things around and getting things planned and things like that. But it was just, for me, it was a no-brainer. It was obviously, I was like, I wanted to get there and I wanted to get it done because I was that excited for it. I was like a kid at Christmas. But yeah, to me it was like having conversations with obviously Sean Connor and my agent. It was kind of a thing of, you're going to be going over there, you're playing in a top flight. Obviously, people don't tend to know about South African football over here. Like, obviously, you only kind of know it if you've played as Kaizer Chiefs or Orlando Pirates on FIFA or on Football Manager or whatever. So, like, I was sent through the list of games and seeing that you're playing Orlando Pirates away, Kaizer Chiefs away, getting to know that probably Mamelodi Sundowns were the biggest team in the league. Obviously, I think they're now 7 or 8 times consecutive league winners. To go and play them, and the vast majority of games were going to be televised as well, which was another big selling point. And being able to live somewhere that probably, like, when I look back on it and I tell my kids and things like that, like, was able to live in Cape Town for 12 months and play football and work and live and experience all that. Like, I think to me it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, fair play. I think, 15-year-old Sam would have definitely jumped to that opportunity.
Yeah.
So go on, you say you touched down, and is it pretty much a military coup as you get there? Like, what's the state that the country's in?
So it wasn't actually a military coup in South Africa. So I flew from Edinburgh to Amsterdam, landed in Amsterdam. I think it was about 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning. As I'm walking through Amsterdam Schiphol, which is absolutely huge, got to my gate, sat there, and I'm looking at my phone, going, I'm not queuing up to board here. Like, what's going on? Next minute, over the tannoy, we'd just like to let passengers know for their flight to Cape Town, your flight is going to be delayed for a minimum of 2 hours. There's currently a military coup going on in Niger, so we can't fly through Niger airspace. So KLM were trying to divert the flight around. I think it was around Burkina Faso and all that, to try and go through their airspace to get round and into Cape Town. And I can remember sitting there, and because there've been so many hurdles with work, with obviously Edinburgh City and other things, and I can remember thinking, please don't this military coup, which is totally out of my control now, scupper this move. And I can remember I had a 3-way conversation with Sean and Darren to just say, look, I'm on my way. I'm stuck in Amsterdam at the moment. I'm delayed, but I will make it to Cape Town. They are saying the flight will leave at some point. Like, I'm on my way. And the 3 of us just ended up laughing, because we'd gone through so much stress and so much hard work to get me, out of my contract and get me ready to go over there and things like that, that it was like, right, this can't be the thing that kills it, because they were wanting me to play in a friendly against Stellenbosch on the Saturday morning. So it was like, if the flight's delayed tonight, then I'm losing another day in the build-up for the game. So it was, thankfully, I ended up, instead of landing in Cape Town at 9 p.m, I landed at about just after midnight, something like that. But obviously, I'd played the night before, having flown the next day, and then I was up for training at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, which was really interesting. But yeah, it was good. It was an experience. It was something that, again, I can tell my kids about, that a military coup almost killed the transfer.
Yeah, definitely a story to tell. I don't think there's too many people with that sort of situation as well. So when you've got there, they sort of set you up with accommodation. What sort of digs are you in? What's the lifestyle like? What's the setup?
Yeah, so it was interesting, really, because obviously I think there'd been twice before this that I'd actually tried to go to Cape. So the club was called Cape Town Spurs, but they used to be known as Cape Town Ajax, because Ajax used to have a shared ownership or some kind of model with the club. So I had previous conversations a couple of years before. There was a sports scientist who used to be at Tranmere Rovers, who was working for Cape Town Ajax at the time, and I'd been having conversations. I think it was when I came back from Ireland that I'd had conversations with him to try and get myself over there, just for a bit of training, just to see what it was about, and try and see if I could work a deal out. I think actually they were in the league below at the time, and then there was a second time that I'd briefly had conversations with another agent, probably about a year or two later, about possibly going there. But again, just things I think I'd agreed somewhere else and whatnot. So now it ended up being like third time's the charm. So at the time, the club's training ground, they had like digs, they had accommodation, because I think when a couple of years before, when it was Cape Town Ajax, they used to put the kids up from around Cape Town, and they used to have them living, like, this place had 5 rooms that all had 6 beds in it, like 6 single beds that were all it used to be full of kids, and it had 2 classrooms in, and a full kitchen and living area for all the kids and things like that. So the club was using it for the senior players who had either been in on trial or who had not sorted accommodation out yet, and they were staying there. So that's where I was put in there, which was good. But the only issue was, in South Africa you have load shedding, which is where, imagine we're all sitting in the middle of the kitchen area and using the cookers and the stove and any of the electrics. They turn off the electrics, the government do, to try and save energy. So you'll be sitting there with the TV on. Next minute, the TV will shut off and none of the plug sockets work.
With no prior warning, just...
So you can check for load shedding online. You can see what time your area gets affected by it. Right. So, like, we may be watching, I don't know, I think it was the start of the Premier League season. We'd be watching the Premier League on the TV, and next minute it cut off. And you had to make sure your phone was charged to contact back home, and none of the Wi-Fi would work or anything like that. And you're like, oh my God, like, but after a couple of days, I got into the rhythm of it, of buying myself a portable charger. So I knew my phone was always charged and things like that. Just kind of have to work around it. But it was certainly interesting at times.
And then have you gone over there, obviously, apart from the links with your agent and whatnot, have you got any other mates or footballers you've sort of crossed paths with along the way that are even based in South Africa, or you're out on your own?
The only person, so even when I landed there, Sean Connor, who was the technical director, obviously I'd been speaking to, he hadn't even landed yet. He didn't come out for another 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. So I literally landed and was on my own. And it was basically survived by myself, essentially. So from the minute I landed, really, I started looking at accommodation to move into and things like that to try and get myself. Because especially, I think it's important. I couldn't have lived in the club dorms for the full season because I'd have gone totally bonkers, because I need my own space. I need to be able to walk in and be able to sit on my own couch and watch my own TV.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the boys, especially some of the local boys, had stayed there all season. And I don't comment on other people's living conditions, but personally, for my own comfort, I knew I preferred to be in my own setup and do my own shopping, have my own telly and things like that, just to settle myself in more easily. Because I'm a long way from home. So yeah, I was essentially on my own for the first at least 4 weeks until Sean arrived, and then thankfully I was able to have somebody who was be able to bounce stuff off, because in case I was a little bit worried and things like that. So we had quite not obviously he was a peer in there, but if I was ever struggling or anything like that, or I needed help, because he's worked in Africa previously, so I was able to have conversations with him like, where's the bank and things like this, and what's this, and trying to sort out living accommodation and anything I needed with the club. It was always somebody I could turn to and look at for guidance a little bit.
And then when you were going to training and your first few like friendly matches and competitive games, did you notice a bit of a difference in the style of football? Obviously, I imagine it's very different compared to playing in Scotland. Did you have to adapt a little bit, and did you notice that early on?
Yeah, so it was kind of weird, because my contract had been agreed before I flew out. I signed my contract I think I landed on the Thursday, signed on the Monday or the Tuesday the following week. Once I'd done my medical tests and things like that. So obviously you have to apply for a work permit over there, which had to be applied for. Then had to get I think it's called your TMS, sent from Edinburgh through the Scottish FA to the South African FA and then to the club. And over there as well, you have to get like a playing card printed from the league to show who you are and who each player is. So when the teams meet before a game, everybody knows who everybody is and things like that. But my work permit was printed wrong, and we were quite lucky to spot it, really. When my work permit and information had been sent from obviously the Home Affairs in Cape Town to Pretoria, where they all get done, they'd sent my work permit back with the wrong passport number. And it was only found out when they went to open my bank that my work permit number was wrong, so the bank wouldn't open my account. So it had to be redone. So I ended up missing the first 5 league games. Thankfully, 2 were at home, so I was able to watch them, and then I was able to catch the others on the TV. So it delayed, actually. I think it was after the first international break, which was good for me as well, because it got me a little bit more acclimatized to the weather. I think I was able to move in that point into my apartment and things like that. So everything had kind of fell into place a little bit, and I kind of knew where everything was, knew who everybody was. I'd had a couple of beers with a couple of the boys and got quite friendly with them. So yeah, it was quite daunting when you're looking at your list of things that you need to sort out and things like that. But being able to sit there and be able to watch the games, I think we played Chipper at home and somebody else at home. I can't remember who the other team was. We played them 2 games at home anyway. I was able to watch them. The main difference I thought was probably after about an hour of the game, it ends up being there's 5 players on your defensive line and our 5 players are right up top, and you could almost the middle of the park, it seemed to get bypassed, which is certain teams don't play that way. But I noticed especially that the teams probably in the bottom half of the table, it would be like ping pong. It would be very, very quick. It would be, and I said this and this is not I don't want to slate the standard of football, because I think the standard of football is actually quite high. But what I found was probably the movement of the ball, like when teams pass the ball about, was probably a bit slower than probably what Scottish football is. Whereas the speed of the individual player was a hell of a lot quicker. A lot of the boys had a lot of pace, and that was especially like say in training or in games, if you were parrying a ball and then you're having to get up and get the rebound, you notice they're probably a yard and a half closer than probably what they were. Or even taking a back pass and getting closed down. Boys came at you a lot quicker. But no, the start, like I've had a conversation with a manager up in Scotland not too long ago, and we were talking about the standard, and he was saying he equated it to probably the Championship and the bottom half of the Premiership over here. So some of the levels of some of the players, especially when you go to like the likes of Sundowns or Pirates or Kaiser Chiefs, even you look at some of the boys at probably Cape Town City or Supersport United, like some boys are played at a very, very good standard.
And could you give us a bit of an idea? Obviously, South Africa's more known for its rugby, probably cricket than football. How big is it out there? Like, sort of how big are the attendances for games, and is football, is it on in the TVs and bars and stuff? Is it widely spoken about?
So it was quite strange because obviously I was over there when the Boks won the World Cup, so that was amazing to see. Like everything was about the Springboks. They had like shopping bags, had the Boks all over it. But if you had a conversation in a bar or a restaurant with somebody, and especially being obviously having a Scouse accent, people would say, "Oh, what are you doing over here?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm playing for Cape Town Spurs," and people would be like, "Who?" Because as well, a lot like you would often bump into people that say that, "Oh, I'm a Kaiser Chiefs fan, or I'm a Orlando Pirates fan, or a Sundowns fan, or somebody like that." But people would often find it strange that I'd moved from here over there, to play football and things like that. But like, it was weird because more often than not, you would have the rugby on. Like I even went to go and see one of the rugby games, actually two of the rugby games, or they would often have the cricket on, and probably football was probably their third sport. Like a lot of our boys had come from playing cricket or things like that, especially at their schools. Some of the boys had shown me videos of when they were at school and even their high school rugby. You're getting like 2.5, 3,000. Like the whole school has to turn up to rugby events for the high school, like for their senior years. And they will take attendance, and if you're not there, you're pulled up about it. So rugby is a massive sport for them, but it would also often depend on who you were playing against. Like if we were playing not like probably one of the teams that probably we knew we wouldn't get a big attendance. So anyone like a Sundowns, a Pirates, or a Chiefs, we would use the big DHL stadium, which was a rugby stadium in Cape Town. We would use that stadium as the attendance was going to be larger. Whereas if we were playing a team that we probably knew we wasn't going to get the same attendance level, we would play at Athlone Stadium, which is, again, it's probably an 8,000 seater. And I can't remember whether it was the Dutch used it as their training base for the World Cup in South Africa. But again, a lot of it would be that it just depends. Like the night we beat Pirates at home, I think there was about 14,000. And again, I think there was the same for the Cape Town Derby. So again, you got big attendances. Even when we played Stellenbosch, which is again another derby, like there was a good attendance there as well, probably a little bit less than the Cape Town City game.
And I imagine for those higher attended games, I imagine the South Africans are quite a wild, atmospheric crowd. I bet they get right behind the team.
Yeah, it was really, really strange because like you're used to being effed and blinded at in Scottish football or even in English football or even Irish football or Republic of Irish football, sorry. But over there it was less probably personal. You would hear people, and what almost always amazed me was all the fans would sit together. So it wasn't like segregation where it was Kaiser Chiefs fans behind one goal and it was Cape Town City or Cape Town Spurs, fans behind one goal. It was everybody sat together, and it was always more of like a little bit of a party atmosphere watching the football, which again was kind of strange and things like that. But no, it was good. It was interesting. You would often find you probably see them on Twitter all the time. The videos of some of the South African fans where they've got the big hats on that have got street signs on, and I've seen guys on there and they're holding up full fishes and things like that, and loads of bread with stuff written on it to try and get themselves on the TV, which is always interesting. But yeah, it's a crazy place to play, and some of the rituals and some of the religions and the languages. It's all mind-boggling for me. It was brilliant.
And then, so talk about your first few months. Obviously, you've already overcome a few barriers, whether it's military coups, your work permit, electric shutouts. Like you finally get your feet sort of, on the ground, playing a few games? How was playing your first few matches for Cape Town Spurs?
Oh, it was honestly it was brilliant. Like, I think I made my debut, like, obviously as a team. We like the first 5 games we'd not picked up any points. I think a lot of that was down to as well the fact that we came up from the league below through the playoffs. So we'd had probably a shorter off-season period for recovery, and then gone straight back into a pre-season. Probably we'd probably not recruited as quick as we'd like as well. I think there was probably targets that he probably missed out on, not knowing what league we were going to be in and things like that. So we didn't start the league great. We'd lost the first 5 games, and as soon as I was registered, I made my debut against Golden Arrows at home, and we'd gone into a 1-0 lead and ended up losing the game 2-1. Which then my following appearance after that was the Cape Town Derby, which was like being thrown from the frying pan into the fire. Like, because I remember I'd never played in a stadium that big. And I remember we trained on it the day before, and I remember looking around, I was going, this is absolutely huge. Like, it's nearly probably a 50,000-60,000 seater. And you think, Jesus, like, it was massive. But we called it captain's practice, where we obviously trained on the pitch and things like that, and it was amazing. But what was also strange was the fact that we were only given 1 hour to train on the pitch. So it was literally from the moment you stepped on that pitch, your hour started. So everybody had to go out together. You had to warm up in the dressing room and in a couple of the rooms below. And it was literally as soon as we got on the pitch, that's the session started. Obviously we got beat in the derby. We got beat 3-1, sorry, which again was unfortunate. And then unfortunately the owners made the decision to relieve the manager and his staff of the duties, who were obviously the manager that brought me in and things like that, which was a shame, because I held Coach Nazif, Coach Sean Bartlett, and Coach Calvin Marlin in really high regard, because they were the ones that had brought me in, and especially Calvin himself. He'd done a lot of work with me to probably get me a little bit fitter, get me a little bit more acclimatized, and help me with things that probably learn a different style of football and different way of doing things.
And then, so in the team, I imagine there's not many. Well, I don't know, to be fair, but are there many players sourced from around the world, or is it mainly South African-based players in the team?
So in the league, you can have 5 foreigners as a quota. They have a 5 foreigner quota. So there was myself at the time. There was myself, and there was a Namibian boy, called Benny Hakongo. So we were the 2 foreigners at the time. We ended up signing another boy from England as well, Tremaine Eastman, who was ex-Burnley. So we ended up signing him. But yeah, it was quite daunting as well, because they tend to call Namibia almost as part of South Africa, because they use the same currency and things like that. So trying to, obviously, everybody spoke English, but I think going abroad, you can sometimes, depends what type of character you are, you can find it a little bit daunting when you walk into a dressing room and people are speaking Zulu, Xhosa, Afrikaans, Venda. There's 14 different languages in South Africa. It's that vast. So it can be quite daunting, but you just have to trust yourself, and probably try and think the best of people that are probably not talking about you behind your back or anything like that, which I'd like to think they didn't, because I was quite close to a lot of the boys, but you never know.
And are they quite welcoming of you then? Obviously, they're not expecting you to converse in 14 different languages. Like, they're more than happy to speak English.
Don't get me wrong. I tried my hand at some of the Afrikaans and some of that. Obviously, you get taught the bad words first. There's probably any foreigner that comes to UK or Scotland or England or whatever always get taught the bad words first. But I'd at least try and greet people in Afrikaans, and at least give it a go to try and show that I'm trying to learn a little bit more. But I think obviously the vast majority of people, everybody spoke really good English as well. So yeah, they were very, very welcome. It was quite nice to feel that welcomed into the dressing room that quickly. The only different culture shock for me was the first day I arrived and the first day I trained. So normally you would have to do a song over here, but over there we had to do a dance. And
is there video footage of this? Or?
I'm 6'6" and don't dance very well, and I don't move very well. So I'd done that, and then I think I had to do another dance when my contract was done and it was announced, and then I had to do another dance when I shaved my hair off. I got a buzz cut, and I think it was kind of a celebration of Sam's fresh haircut. So I had to do another dance then. So
Wow.
I've at least managed to practice my dance moves while I was over there.
That's one thing to bring back, yeah. So you mentioned Sean Bartlett, obviously. So he was manager there, and he was over here playing for Charlton back in the early noughties and stuff. So did having someone with experience of British football sort of help in a way? Did he almost,
Yeah,
a bit better?
It did. I think he understood a little bit of not just the way I am as a person, but the way that I act as well. As probably I try and consider myself as quite professional in the way I go about things and the way I act and the way I train and the effort I put in and things like that. So I think he understood it where there was sometimes sometimes over there you find a little bit of I don't want to say complacency, but everything's very relaxed. And if I'm shouting at somebody, I want something done now. And I think he understood that and he kind of accepted it, and he kind of allowed me straight away to go into kind of a senior role in the dressing room, which was nice for me, especially. Obviously, I think anyway I've played nearly 200 games. I can be seen as quite senior in quite a lot of dressing rooms, especially in the things that I've done and the places I've been in my career, which was quite welcoming and how he's seen my ability. But yeah, and I can remember there's a really interesting story with Sean Bartlett that. When I obviously over here we call managers a gaffer. Obviously that's my gaffer and things like that. But over there there's a Afrikaans word which is very, very similar to the word gaffer. So I can remember we were doing a kit launch day, and I shook hands and said, "Oh, gaffer, that's my contract done and sorted. Like it's all been signed and sent away and things like that." And I can remember seeing 3 or 4 of the boys turn their head, obviously wondering what I'd just said. And the rules for racism over there are really strict, and as they very well should be. You can be sent to jail for saying things like that to people. So I can remember a couple of days later I was having a conversation with Calvin Marlin, and I said to him, like, what's this word and things like that. Obviously I don't want to fall foul to it, I don't want to offend people. So I ended up having a conversation with Sean Bartlett and said, look, I never knew anything about this word or anything, what it is and what its connotations are. So I want to apologize. I said, I'll just call you coach from now on, because everybody called him coach anyway.
Yeah.
And then we went into a team meeting, an analysis meeting, and he stopped the meeting right at the start and said, look, to the lads, he was like, look, he said, I haven't played in England. Obviously Sean himself, he said, look, I haven't played in England. He said, over there they call managers gaffer. He said, you've probably heard Sam called me a gaffer a few times. He said, he's not calling me the word. Do you think he is? He said, he's going to try and call me coach, but just understand if he does say it, he's not saying what you think he's saying. The whole room burst into laughter. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, look, and I just held my hands up and I went, look, sorry, coach. Like,
yeah.
But again, it allowed me to kind of slip in with a little bit of ease and just kind of settle into the team and things like that. So no, it was. And Sean Bartlett, I think, will go on to probably have a really good managerial career. Obviously, he won promotion with Cape Town Spurs, and obviously, I think he was a bit unfortunate in the time frame that he had. Obviously, he was assistant manager at Kaiser Chiefs and things like that. But it's just unfortunate for him, and I did feel real sadness for him when he left, along with his staff as well, because they were good people, and they were just probably found themselves quite unlucky.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a good relationship with him and a lucky escape as well. So it's good that he had a bit of knowledge to the British language, shall we say. So obviously one management team goes out, you sort of start to see them leave and you never know what's around the corner, and you lot come in. How was your relationship with the new coach?
So we went through a period where I think we'd been beaten on the Saturday by Cape Town City, but we had SuperSport United on the Tuesday. So the sporting director, Sean Connor, he took temporary charge while they were looking for a replacement. And the club hired Vasily Manasakis, who was of Greek descent, but he was a South African guy. Really, very, very, very good coach. And he was brought in as Sean's kind of co-manager assistant, to try and obviously give Sean a little bit of background of South African football, because he's worked in a couple of other countries around Africa, to try and build a team that would at least try and get a couple of results and things like that. and they brought in Ernal Kemp, who was an ex-goalkeeper, had played for Cape Town Ajax at the time and a couple of the teams around South Africa. So that was now the new, almost technical group. And they took charge for the best part of, I think it was 6-7 weeks, while the club were negotiating with a new manager. Which was as well for me. It was good because obviously I knew Sean by this point. He'd been on the ground for about 6 or so weeks by this point, and we'd obviously had conversations and we discussed the style of football that now he was in charge and the style of football he wanted to play and what he wants to do and things like that. And it suited me really well. And obviously his coach Vasily was really good with some of the tactical aspects and things like that, and the reading of the game, and just a generally good guy. And yeah, I think we played 6 or 7 games under that technical team. And obviously thankfully we beat Pirates at home. I think it was on a Friday night just before the international break. And that was the one result we got under that technical team before the club made the decision to appoint Ernst Middendorf.
And I think I remember when you went over there in the first few months, I think I remember seeing on Twitter you were getting some mentions on their version of Match of the Day and getting in the Team of the Week and stuff. So were you getting a bit of coverage around the country?
I felt as though probably, I think when I made my debut against Golden Arrows, I was kind of almost shaking off a little bit of the ring rust. Obviously, I'd played a few games in Scotland and then probably gone about 5 weeks without playing. So shaking off a bit of the ring rust. And then we played Cape Town City. And then a couple of weeks later, we played Orlando Pirates. But I felt as though my performance was starting to build and I was starting to gain a little bit of momentum, like just coming for crosses, dealing with my kicking, and all my other aspects were starting to polish up. I was starting to become probably the goalkeeper I thought I can always be. And yeah, we played Orlando Pirates, and I had a really good game. We ended up winning the game. We went into a 2-0 lead really early. This was we'd just been up to Orlando Pirates to play them in the cup as well, which was a game that I was rested for, but ended up coming on for the last half an hour or so because our goalkeeper our other cup goalie was injured. So I ended up coming on, which was again an amazing thing because Orlando Pirates Stadium, you couldn't hear anything. Obviously, it's so high in altitude as well because it's in Johannesburg, which is like the city. They call it the City of Gold because it's so high up, and they found the gold up there. And I think it was the most tired I'd probably been after a game, right? Because of the altitude. I'd only played half an hour, but I was dripping in sweat. But yeah, that was an interesting. And then obviously we playing them at home quite quickly in the return in the league, and beating them 2-1. And I'd made a couple of good saves and a couple of good claims for crosses and things like that, and almost got an assist. If Ashley hadn't have hit the keeper, I'd have probably got another assist on my career. But yeah, and I was lucky enough that they done probably about, I think it was about 4.5-5 minute segments on their version of Match of the Day, which was broadcast live all over South Africa, which again was a massive thing because it was, you realised how publicised probably the league was then when you see them type of things. Yeah, no, that's massive. That's huge. I remember seeing it, and proud moment for playing away from home alumni. It was really interesting, like seeing you. Like, and I can remember I was taking videos of it and sending it to people back home. Like, it was because I think we'd gone into a 2-0 lead and we wanted to make some tactical tweaks. So I went down looking as though my hamstring was a little bit sore, just to try and kill the game off a little bit. Yeah. And I can remember they mentioned it on the TV. They were like, "Oh, he was lucky to continue if that hamstring was really that bad," and things like that. Thinking tactics, but no, it was good. And again, that was beating them that night. Like, I can remember clear as day what the stadium was like, and I can just remember, like, after the game, feeling so emotional because, like, playing Orlando Pirates would be like, I don't know, say maybe Annan playing Rangers or Celtic or someone like that. Like, Pirates at the time, probably Pirates weren't in probably great form as they probably should be. But like, we were obviously a smaller team that had just been promoted, and to go and beat Pirates was a massive result. And we were hoping that would then be the turning point for our season, that we'd gone and beaten them. And unfortunately, it wasn't. Unfortunately, it was kind of a false dawn. But like, it was still a great result. And I can remember saying to Sean, like, obviously if he'd have kept the job until the end of the season, that would be the first win of many under him, because we were playing some really, really good football.
So then there were obviously some tough results after then, and a bit of change in management, and then Ernst Middendorp to come in. How did he sort of, first few weeks under him, how did you settle into his coaching methods and styles?
This side of probably my experience in South Africa is probably what now pains me a little bit. I feel as though I think there had probably been I'd been aware of certain complaints from probably higher up in the club, that maybe I don't look fit, or I don't look whatever. Don't get me wrong, my body type is a lot. Probably when I signed, I probably wasn't 100% fit, because we'd not long gone back for pre-season in Scotland. I probably wasn't as fit as I could have been, but I think in the space of a couple of weeks, I'd lost nearly 10 kilo and things like that. So I was on the right path to where I should be, and I was building it as I was playing games. So I was aware that there had probably been a few things said, and I was having conversations with the manager at the time, and having conversations with the sports scientist and things like that, that I was putting my diet, my recovery, my extra trainings and things like that. So I was aware there was a few murmurings, and whether it's my belief or not, that some of these murmurings may have been passed down to Ernst Middendorp before he took the job. And it also didn't help that probably I was a foreigner, and I was an easy target from being a foreigner. So when Ernst Middendorp came in, I can remember he came in, he had a meeting with us all in the gym, and I kind of felt from minute one that he's probably not going to like me. When you tend to shake, if I was meeting you in person and I was shaking your hand, I would look you in the eyes.
Yeah.
I'd see it as a sign of respect.
Yeah.
And obviously I introduced myself when I was shaking his hand and said, Sam Ramsbottom, blah, blah, blah. And I can remember shaking his hand, and I can remember him looking away from me. And at that point, I kind of thought to myself, either something's been said and he knows something, or this probably isn't going to end well. And it's not a nice feeling, because then you're always fighting against the tide. I tried my best. I tried to have conversations with him. I tried to be as open and honest, and I worked as hard as I could do. I was doing my extra trainings and things like that. But for some unknown reason, now still not know to this day, he never wanted to have a conversation with me. He never wanted to discuss with me anything. And that may have been because he wanted to use the money he pays me in wages to bring in his own players. I don't know. And I still don't know to this day, and I'm still no longer aware of the reasons why.
And did you see that sort of his manner with any other players in the squad? Did he sort of have that almost dismissive way with other players, or?
I'd had, obviously, I don't know. I still didn't know the league probably that well. But I'd had conversations with boys who had been under his tenure before at the different clubs he's been at in South Africa. I think he's been at about 7 or 8 different clubs. So I'd had conversations with them, and they'd said to me, look, obviously when this then gets further down the line to what ended up happening over there, that he tried to do the same things to other boys. And he tried to force them out of clubs, which is what ended up happening. And that's the type of person he was. I think he may have tried to do it as kind of a shock to everybody. Like, I can remember the day that he's walked in and said that I've left the club, which was, again, totally unfounded and untrue, because I hadn't at this point. And I can remember that I had the conversation with the technical director, and he just would walk past me, wouldn't have a conversation with me. And I can remember after that having conversation with boys and said, look, he does that. He's done that to people everywhere he's kind of been. And whether that was him trying to stamp his authority on the team and seeing me as an international and this certain player that he could, if he does that, he'll run the roost. I don't know. You'd have to ask him, because he wouldn't have a conversation with me.
And I take it from that point on of him coming in, you didn't play a single game again.
So I played 2 games under him. I played Royal AM and I played Stellenbosch. They were the only 2 games I played under him. Probably the Stellenbosch game, I've probably cost them a goal. Maybe we were 2-0 down at the point, and it was late on. I've tried to play out from the back, and I've played the ball into midfield. We've given it away, and they've scored. So okay, maybe you can stick the finger at me for that one for trying to play it out the back. But other than that, I felt I'd done okay under him. I'd been training really well, and next minute I think we'd played up. Pardon me. I think we played on the Saturday. We had the Sunday off, I think, or we were either in on the Sunday, off on the Monday. Come back into training on the Tuesday, and this is where, again, as a person, as a human being, I think respect goes a long way. If he'd have pulled me into the office and told me himself, look, Sam, you're not what I want. You're going to go to my third choice. If we can get rid of you during January, then we will. If not, you're my third choice. It's up to you to show me why you shouldn't be my third choice. That would have gone down. That probably would have caused me to act probably a little bit more maturely than what I did. But for him to give it to the sporting director to do that job was it was very disrespectful to me. If you're going to make that decision, you give me your explanation.
Yeah. And obviously, at that point, so they have quite a bit of a long winter break, don't they, in South Africa?
Yeah,
for about 6 weeks.
We had the African Cup of Nations, so I think our last game was New Year's Eve, so I missed, I think, the last game before the New Year's break, and then we were off from what was it? We were off from probably the 1st of January until the 12th of January, and then we were back in training from then. But what had happened was, before the last game before the New Year, which I think may have been Amazulu, I was basically told. So again, this is where it still annoys me and still hurts me a little bit. There was no communicate. So I was then told this, and the boys were all told that Sam's left the club. So once that had happened, I'm in the gym. I'd thought to myself, well, I was not allowed to go into. We had kind of like peer group meetings where there were certain senior members of the squad, and they would have discussions with the younger lads to try and bring them forward. And I was told, no, you're not allowed to be in these peer group meetings. So I was on the phone to my agents, trying to work things out, what should we do, and things like that. And thankfully, I was told, look, keep yourself above board, keep a diary of anything that happens, keep witnesses around you, just because what can end up happening is they can try and force you out and try and sack you. Right, okay, no problem. So anything I'd done, I made sure I had witnesses with me and things like that. And I can remember it clear as day. It was the day we'd hired a new goalkeeper coach to come in. And what had essentially happened was they'd all had their peer group meetings, and I think it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the time they'd finished their peer meetings and other meetings they'd been in during the day. And the new goalkeeper coach was taking the goalkeepers out. And I thought, well, I may well be involved here. I don't know what's going on. So I walked in the office and said, am I to go out with the goalkeepers? And all I heard was a big resounding no coming from the manager's office. So I was like, right, okay, I'll take that as it is. And then Vasily Manasakis came and spoke to me and said, look, Sam, the manager said, if you're done, just leave. Like, he doesn't want you causing a disturbance or anything like that. Just leave. Like, I don't know what I was going to probably do, but I was told, look, if you finish with your gym, you can leave. And then this is where probably the relationship turns a little bit more sour between me and Ernst, because I was told by my representatives, unless you're told a different time to turn up for, keep turning up for training, because then it can be seen as lack of discipline. Sam's gone AWOL, things like that. So I kept turning up to training and was told, no, you're not training. No, you're not training. No, you're not training. Instead of somebody from the club pulling me and saying, look, this is what you need to do. This is what time you need to report X, Y, and Z, which should have been dictated from the manager, because it was his decision that he made. Now, who was making the decisions, I don't know. I would just often get a text from, because we had like a team liaison manager, and he would often just text me and say, no, you can, like, you don't need to be in, or this and that and whatever. So I don't know, and I still don't understand the reasons why, but it only seemed to get worse and worse and worse.
And what are your teammates sort of saying to you at that point? Obviously, it sounds like you had a pretty good relationship with them in the first few months and stuff. And are they a bit like, what's going on? Are they just used to his methods? Is he like well known? Like you said, he's managed quite a few clubs across the country. Is it just like that's what he does, or did they feel like, hang on, what's happening with Sam, like getting back in the team? Or?
Yeah, so it was quite strange because as well, like at the time, I think we were doing a lot of double sessions, and because I was trained, like I would go out running on my own while they were training, or I would be in the gym in the afternoon or whatever. So it was quite difficult for them because I wouldn't want to be having dinner with them, so it looked like I was influencing them, or I wouldn't want to be seen grabbing a coffee with them. Like certain senior members in the squad who I was really close with, they weren't too fussed because they were like, I'm who I am, and I've played a career out here, so I'm fine. Like, and still to this day, get on really well with them. But so especially some of the younger boys that, because I'm kind of in that middle age group where I had pals below and pals above. So, and I ended up turning around to a good group of them and just saying, look, if you don't want to be seen near me or around me while we're at the training ground, then that's fine. That's no problem. Just don't act funny with me. If you don't want to, I won't take offense to it, because at the end of the day, you've still got a career to come. I'm trying to do what's best for myself. And to be fair, I got on with a house on fire with a lot of the boys, and still ended up going on days out, nights out, and going around for braais and things like that. So it wasn't too much of an issue, but you don't want to put people in that situation.
It must have felt quite isolating for you. Obviously,
horrifically.
You're in a country far away from home. It's already a bit of a new environment for you. Things have started fairly well, and then your day to day, you're on your own. You're being told don't come in. You haven't really got, your family and old friends and people to turn to. How did you sort of cope? Did you feel like they were just wanting you to actually tear up your contract and leave? Did you think about doing that, or did you feel that would give them a win?
No, so in my head, they'd offered me a settlement figure for what was remaining on my contract. So it's interesting if you search, obviously, Sam Ramsbottom and Cape Town Spurs on Google. So within 4 hours of me being told that my services were essentially no longer required, that had then been leaked to the press.
Right.
So it was then all over South African news. So I was getting texts from people back home saying what's going on, X, Y, and Z. Being asked for comments and things like that, to which I kept silent, because this is the first time publicly I've spoke about all this. Again, partially because I'm under contract, and not that I'm dragging, because anything I'm saying here is factual, and I have evidence, and I have text messages, I have emails, I have phone calls, I have witnesses, all to back anything up that I am saying. And this is my issue, because I couldn't say it when I was under contract. And it's more the disappointment of how it was all handled. And it was horrifically isolating. My mental health took a huge battering, because there was times where you're thinking, what's the point of me getting up today? Because, and the only upside of it was that I lived by the beach, that I could go to the beach. That was, and that might seem like and thankfully my obviously as well, my family came over at Christmas, and they were out for Christmas and New Year, so I was able to spend time with them. But then that brings its own set of worries, because you've still got a mortgage to pay back here, and you're going, well, if I take a settlement, then I'll be a few months short on what I'm owed, and things like this. And you go, what do I do? And as well, the other predicament I was in was because I'd played games for Edinburgh City and then played for Cape Town Spurs.
You couldn't get another club.
So I'd have had to have gone to like a Finland, Norway, Denmark, Ireland, somewhere like that, to carry on playing for that season. I couldn't really. It's a smaller window for me and my agent to try and find something. So it was, and it, like, obviously my contract ends the end of June, and that's the date my contract finishes. Now, obviously, I won't have played for the last couple of months, but obviously I'll be paid up until that point. But obviously, I flew home in April because I was under suspension. The club decided to make the decision to suspend me, to keep me away from the premises. And I think I'd spent 7 weeks over there suspended, which meant I didn't have to be into the club. I didn't have to go in, do anything. A very, very minimal. The only contact I'd had with them was regarding settlements. There was no check-up on how Sam's mental health. There was nobody from the club reaching out to say how Sam's mental health and things like that. Like, I was under my letter of suspension, I was told I'm no longer to speak to any employees of the club. I'm not to work on behalf of the club. I'm not to be affiliated with the club. It's all written out in the suspension document. And yeah, and that was that. And in the end, I ended up making the decision that it was like, right, what's best for me now is because I was basically I'm the driver of my own life. I was like, I may as well go home. So I came home I flew back April the 2nd and landed April the 3rd.
And when you spoke about them leaking it to the press shortly after you were given that first settlement offer, was it painted in a way that almost you're the bad guy if you don't take it? It sort of reminded me a bit of Jack Rodwell at Sunderland vibes when they tried to pay him off and he was just saying no. How was it sort of portrayed in the press?
So it was leaked in the press as, so the first time I seen it was on the Cape Town supporters page, and it was basically sent. It was a photo of me playing against Stellenbosch, and the tagline of it was, "Ramsbottom says goodbye," or "Ramsbottom's on a plane," something like that. And then it was edited and changed to something else. And it was basically said in the press that Ernst Middendorf has made the decision to get rid of Sam Ramsbottom, and then it ends up on all over different places because it gains traction. Speaking to my agents, asking for comments and things like that, and obviously I can't comment on it. And then I think we played the following game, and the managers asked about ingoings and outgoings in the club, and he states, "Oh, Sam Ramsbottom's not in the plans. We're currently agreeing a deal with his agent to relieve him from the football club," which again wasn't true. I'd had one conversation with the sporting director, and he was like, "They're going to offer you a settlement." After that, I hadn't heard anything, so the ball was essentially still in their court. Oh, sorry, that was my phone. It just went on low battery.
That's all right.
Yeah, so it was essentially left as in, "Well, come to us with a settlement figure and we'll discuss it." But up until that point, they hadn't, which was really infuriating, if I'm honest. But again, there was not much I could do about it. I was kind of left in that position for weeks and months on end, and then prior to the suspension, I was told, I think it was after the January break, that I would then be training with what was essentially our under 18s, under 20s, 5:30 in the night, just to try and make my life difficult, which was fine because it enabled me to coach the younger players, the younger goalies and things like that. So I didn't really mind it, and I was able to keep myself fit and things like that. But again, it's a little bit difficult when you're being asked to being trained with the under 18s or the under 23s, whatever. Feels, especially as a footballer, it feels a little bit embarrassing because you came over there to play. But yeah, and then I think that the whole tipping of the iceberg was then I was told that I was no longer allowed to use the first team dressing room, and I was no longer allowed to use the club's gym, which, quite frankly, reading the rules of the law, you're supposed to have access to club facilities. Now, that's me, and again, I have a screenshot of the message to prove this, that what I'm saying is factually true, and it's not to drag the club through the ringer or anything like that. But again, that's on a human basis. That's not how you treat people. And it was really disappointing. It was really hurting. If somebody had called me and had a conversation, then we could have ironed any issues out. But no, it was, you're no longer allowed to use the club gym. And whether that was because the manager had seen me waiting for the kids training in the first team dressing room, or had seen me using the gym and things like that, and was being annoyed by my presence, I don't know. But I was then told that you're no longer allowed to use the club facilities, and I had to sign in on a document to show what time I arrived and what time I'd left the club's facilities.
And are you having a lot of the messaging that you seem to be getting is third hand, fourth hand, passed on from the manager? Was there a chance for you to speak to, I don't know, the chairman or someone higher up or on the board, or I don't really know the setup in South Africa, but someone who could perhaps actually say, yeah, good point, this isn't right?
I had asked on record 3 times for a meeting with the manager to discuss reasons why and things like that, and every time I was denied. And that's me coming out and saying, look, I want to sort this out. If he believes I'm not good enough, or if he gives me a reason, then we can sit down and talk about it like individuals that we are and iron this out. But every time it was, no, he's too busy. No, he's doing this. No, he can't. No, he doesn't want to. And that was where I was getting. So in the end, you're banging your head off a brick wall. I can remember sitting down with the owner and in his office and saying to him, I don't understand what I've done. all I want to do is to be given an opportunity to train with the squad and things like that, and try and get back in the team. And it was almost as though I was being painted as a bad egg. And I understand I'm quite a lively and bubbly personality, and I'm quite, I don't want to say aggressive in the way I play, but I'm quite demanding, and I'm quite trying to show off what I want to be able to get across, and quite demanding on players and things like that. But it was very much of like, no, Sam, we want you nowhere near this. We want you nowhere near this club. And which was it was very much hurt me. It's a knock on your ego. It's a knock on your pride. It's hurtful, and it was hard. But again, you look back and you go like, and I can remember the owner turned around and said, "Well, if you think back, Sam, you actually had 2 games to show what you could do under this manager." I was like, "Yeah, but he's still not come to me with where he believes that I can do better." I said, "We've also just signed 4 new players." I was like, that he's brought in. I was like, and I've not played with them, and I've not. I said, he's just hired a new goalkeeper coach. I said, I've not worked with him. I was like, so really, I said, if you're telling me that the last 9 appearances or 10 appearances I've made under you have all not been good enough, I said, I may as well pack my bags and go home. I said, but the fact that you were ranting and raving about me 3 weeks ago, saying how good I was when I was on the TV, I said, and now you're doing this to me. I said, feels as though there's something else. And whether it was money orientated to bring signings in, because he brought three or 4 trialist goalkeepers in on trial during the January break. Whether it was because of that, I don't know. Because I still don't know. I still sit here and wonder why.
And have you, just trying to paint a better picture of it and think of reasons why, would you be considered one of the higher earners in the squad? Was it a case of quite a bit of money to get off the books and open space elsewhere? Or
I would think there was probably pressure from upstairs regarding money. I would think that probably I was on the upper end of the scale, coming from where I came from and being an international and things like that. Obviously, I don't know what boys were earning and things like that. But I think he probably thought he could, if he got rid of me, he could have brought in 1, maybe 1 or 2 players to try and bulk up the squad a little bit. But again, if he was getting rid of me, it opened up an international slot, and the 3 goalkeepers he brought in on trial were all internationals. So he would have been still paying around the same figure. I don't know whether they would have taken less money or whatever it was, whether the owner was thinking, maybe we can cut costs, get rid of Sam, bring somebody in who is, yes, an international, but on a less wage. I wouldn't know, because we never had these conversations.
It's a shame, isn't it? Obviously, you've started off so well, you've got that feature on TV, all seems to be going well, and then it's just taken a turn for the worse. And I suppose what's, like you've touched upon, what's most frustrating for you is you can't put it down something. If in those 2 games you'd let in 5 goals in a game, you'd be like, fair enough, I messed up there, maybe that's why. But if you've had a solid performance, it's
if I'm costing him probably 1 goal at 2-0 down, where the game was probably, I think it was the 88th minute, where the game was probably done anyway and we weren't coming back. So, and I can remember looking at him and going, I can remember I probably thought, coming off in that second game I played under Middendorf, saying to myself, he's probably going to drop me next week. And that's probably where I thought he was going to go. He was probably going to go, I'm going to give somebody else a shot. And I would have gone, you know what, I could probably take that on the chin, because I know I'll probably get back in. But in my head, I was like, for it to go from one extreme to the other, I'd have felt harsh being dropped, because I felt as though I'd been quite consistent. But for that, it was one extreme to another.
And going forward now, I suppose, you know, you've been back in England or Scotland rather, for a couple of months. I mean, you know, obviously important to sort of sort your head out, really, like keep your mental health in a good spot. And I imagine the last couple of months at home's done that. It must have been tough, like we said before, in a foreign country, quite isolated. The beach was a saving grace for you, but do you feel like you're sort of in a good position now to look forward and for your next career steps?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's obviously when I came back, I was training with a club up in Scotland. They were gracious enough to allow me in to do me a favour and keep me training full time. So was able to do that and keep myself ticking over and stuff like that, and get my fitness back. Probably because yes, I've been told not to turn up to the club for the last 7 weeks, but I'd still been running and things like that. But again, it creeps into probably your diet isn't the greatest when you've got every weekend off and things like that, and you're enjoying the weather and probably enjoying life a little bit more when family and that are out. So it was difficult, and obviously going back into train with them, it was a little bit like my body was a bit sore for the first couple of days. But yeah, it's enabled me to sort my head out and things like that. It's a little bit stressful in the respect that, like, obviously we don't know where I'm going to be in the next month or two. Like we go away in 7 days, something like that, from this recording. So like I'll be away in June for a week, and I've got the feeling that I'm hoping anyway that my phone will be blowing up and I'll be getting a clip around the ear for being on the phone so much while I'm on holiday. But I just don't know, and it's hard because obviously Mrs. wants to know if she's gonna be coming, or if it's gonna be a year contract or a 2-year contract, or if it's gonna mean us uprooting, renting the house out and things like that. And you're just a bit like, it's hard. I'm thankful she just before I came back, she was out, and obviously I was able to have a good 2 weeks with her, and she's able to work from over there as well. So that was quite ideal. But that was probably the catalyst in bringing me home, because I was like, I'd been staying with her family because during the January window I gave up my flat, so I was staying with her family out in Cape Town. So I was able to obviously have a roof over my head, and they were good enough to keep me in line and keep me under the thumb, under their house and things like that. So that was nice. But again, you're looking at it and you're going, where am I going to be? And am I going to be needing to pack a suitcase again soon? Like, hopefully it's all sorted sooner rather than later, but you just don't know.
Yeah, I suppose that's a life of a footballer, isn't it, at this time of year? You never quite know what your next step's going to be, but I take it you wouldn't rule out a return to South Africa?
No, I wouldn't, and I believe from early doors there is a little bit of interest over there. Obviously, they finished the end of May, so probably the first week or 10 days is going to be a few managers ins and outs and things like that, and there's going to be a lot of players going in and out and things like that. But there's definitely a chance I could end up back out there and playing back out there again, which again I wouldn't be against. There's different parts of South Africa I'd love to see. Obviously, we'd flown to Durban for games, we'd flown to Johannesburg for games, and the only place I didn't go to was Port Elizabeth. So yeah, it was a lovely country to be in, to be able to go and visit a wine farm of a weekend and things like that. And the climate's backwards compared to here, that it's summer during our winter and winter during our summer. So it had all its perks, and my missus was able to come out 3 times and work from over there, and she loved it. So really, I'm like, what like, to be able to give us that life experience was really good. But again, like, it's the stress of not knowing where you're going to be.
Yeah, it brings me on to the next question. I was going to ask you, away from the football, how did you find South Africa? Like, was it, somewhere you could happily live for a few years?
South Africa was absolutely exceptional as a country, and don't get me wrong, so whereabouts are you from?
Preston.
So you're from Preston, so there's definitely parts of Preston you wouldn't walk around at night.
Exactly, yeah, fair enough.
There's definitely parts of Liverpool I wouldn't walk around. There's parts of Glasgow, there's parts of Edinburgh I wouldn't walk around at night. The issue is that, and I was taught this when I very first went over, was if somebody gets in your 1 yard space or your half a yard space, make sure you know where everybody is, because it could be somebody pickpockets you, somebody starts to get aggressive towards you. I've seen one fight in a nightclub, which I've seen in Liverpool and I've seen in Glasgow, and I've seen 2 people get pickpocketed. I'm sure probably somewhere in my life I've been pickpocketed for something. Like, so that was where the only thing I probably wouldn't have done over there, which is what I do over here, is like I wouldn't walk around at night. Like, obviously there's certain part, but I wouldn't walk around anywhere at night. I would get an Uber from door to door. Yeah. Like, you hear a lot of violence, and you hear, like, not long after I'd moved there was a British doctor shot and killed in Cape Town during the riots. which is obviously a shocking thing to happen. It should never happen in any country. But you do have to keep your wits about you. Like, I can remember, I walked probably one of the first nights out I had over there. I walked from the city centre back to my apartment, which was only 2 streets away. But I thought, why did I do that? Like, and then you grow accustomed to it. But it's, the way I would put it is having common sense about you, and you don't fall victim to them things.
Yeah.
But to be able to go, like, I went on a safari during the African Cup of Nations break. I went to, like, all my family was out. My brother, my partner, and my mum and dad. They were all out. My brother's partner as well. Sorry, and we went to a safari for 3 nights. Like, being able to do that, being able to take my parents to the top of Table Mountain, take them for a drive to Seal Island, take them along Chapman's Peak and things like that. Like, they turned around and said it was the best experience, one of the best holidays they've been on. And I wouldn't have got that opportunity and made their memories had I have not made that decision and took the small leap of faith, or the big leap of faith, should I say?
Yeah, definitely a big one. I suppose it's everywhere you go, you've got to make adjustments, haven't you? And I think, to sum up your time in South Africa, from what I've heard, it's been a massive learning curve, hasn't it? Both, in football terms and just way of life, and from a mental aspect as well. It sounds like you've been on a real roller coaster journey there, but I think it's almost come at a key point of your career. You've still got quite a few years to play if you want to, and I think this is sort of going to shape up your next few steps, and you'll have learned a lot from this process going forward, won't you?
Definitely. I think that, like, obviously my ideal is, by the time this comes out and this is released, that I've signed and I've agreed a contract somewhere and I'm playing football and things like that. Obviously, it's been probably too much of a I don't want to say that word, but too much of a gap now for what's happened and things like that, and the way it all unfolded. But I'd like to be back playing again. I'd like to think playing full time and playing ideally somewhere abroad and somewhere hot. But we just don't know how the cookie's going to crumble. But it came at a point where, probably, had I have stayed playing at the level I was playing, I probably had 4 or 5 years left. Because when you get to the point of when you want to have children and things like that, do I want to be going up to play, not to use certain teams as slander, but to be spending my Saturdays going up to Peterhead, missing taking kids to swimming or gymnastics or whatever and things like that, because you sacrifice, especially playing at part-time level, you sacrifice a lot of your time to go and play for these teams. And any team I play for, I want to give my best, so it means I have to give part of myself to doing that and give it my best. So whether I continue to do that, I genuinely don't know, but I made the decision to step back into full time and give it a go. And I think, for the most part, it worked out as well as I could. I got what I wanted out of it. Obviously, I would have liked more appearances on top, but I think I've obviously got my name out over there. I've risen my profile a little bit more, and hopefully, it's the first step on getting Sam. Do I think I'm probably going to finish my career and be able to retire on the riches in Saudi Arabia? Probably not. And be able to sit and never have to work, and probably not. But if I can live and keep a roof over my head and have a couple of kids along the way, and get them be able to experience their dad playing football in maybe a foreign country, maybe back in Scotland, then I think that would be quite a nice life for us all to live. But the kids are probably a little bit further down the road than what I'm saying now. But who knows? I think it's a lot on making the memory of doing it. Like, I'll look back on probably a little bit of the hurt of what happened, but I also look back on the massive memories I've had. Like, how many people can say they played in a World Cup final stadium? Like, playing Kaiser Chiefs away in the F&B stadium. Like that. Unfortunately, it was behind closed doors. But, like,
don't mention that bit, don't it?
Yeah, I'll keep that bit out of the story. But, like, being able to play in that, and, like, even load shedding even hit that stadium. It got to about an hour into the game and the lights just went off and came back on again. It's like, what's going on? But, like, things like that, like beating Orlando Pirates, and, like, I don't know, it was I didn't do it for financial reasons, and I might have been on good money, but obviously living a life out there and living a life back home as well was quite costly to the money I was earning. But again, it was like if I'd have not done it, I'd have kicked myself, and that's the way I tend to live my life. If I'd not done it, I'd have kicked myself, and I'd have kicked myself forever. So I'm glad I'd done it. Was it worth the stress? Who knows? My hairline might tell me that in a few years, but no, it was definitely worthwhile, and I've made friends over there for life as well. So it was good.
I think it goes back to something you said earlier. You know, if you could speak to 15-year-old Sam now, and you've had these experiences, and like you said, you've ticked off pretty much everything you wanted to achieve when you set your goals at that age now. So I think you're living a life that many people will be envious of, and when it's all over and you look back on it, I'm sure you'll be very proud for A, having the balls to do it, and you know, go out to these sorts of places, and B, being a professional footballer. So we'll eagerly watch your next steps, and hopefully by the time this has come out, there might be some news anyway.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Good luck with everything, but no, it's been great catching up with you again, and maybe further down the line we'll have some further stories from who knows what country coming up.
From who knows where.
Right, all the best then, mate. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Take care. Cheers, pal.